it doesn't matter what you're doing, at some point it's going to feel like work.
And so like in vet med, I find this to be interesting because it comes up quite a bit with like people who've been out, you know, anywhere from a year to 25 years. It's the question of, would you go back and do it again if you had the choice? And I struggle with this one because part of me is like, yeah, there's things that I don't like about my job. There's things that you always wish that you could change. But I kind of feel like the whole find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like everybody is going to find something about their job that they don't like, or there's going to be days where you just don't feel like working. And I think the goal is like kind of what Carlo's mentality is, where I want to pay you enough that when you walk in the door, you can do your job and not have to worry about what's going on at home. And I kind of feel like that's like the goal with working, is like you want to be financially stable enough in your life that you don't feel like you have to work, and then work becomes less of a burden.
Yeah.
And that all rolls into vet med, because that's a huge issue with us obviously right now, is debt to income ratio and debt burden. And so I feel like some vets get into the case where they feel trapped, and feeling trapped in a job that you don't like makes you hate your job even more. So yeah, it's a whole like double-edged sword thing. But
yeah, that's for sure. And that's actually something that I've been trying to figure out how to communicate on like a solutions level, because what ends up happening, and I would even say that it transfers outside of veterinary medicine, but basically any type of profession that ends up where it's a skill set where you have to acquire at a postgraduate level. So like, for instance, my brother is an attorney, so he has 3 years of law school under his belt and all of the student loan debt that went with that. And your postgraduate income at that point's relatively on par with a vet. So similar, but very different. And, one of the things that, you know, he kind of hit was, and is still kind of working through, is basically the idea of, you know, do I stay at this job where I'm not necessarily being as fulfilled as I think I could be, or do I go and try to do this my own way and remove the safety net as a means to gain significantly more fulfillment in life. And him and I actually kicked that around for probably 2 or 3 like weeks, just on and off for hours and hours, and ended up just determining, you know, with where family and all that sort of stuff was, he actually maintained with the safety net, because that was just the right decision to make. Whereas for Carlo, you know, we actually, when we talked this last week, you know, he talks a lot about actually just leaning into the risk because of the opportunity that you can realize. But that's, you know, excuse the cliche, but that's kind of a different strokes for different folks kind of thing. But it does actually shine a pretty important light on that concept of finding purpose and actually knowing it right away. Because if you walk into a postgraduate level the way that I walked into an undergraduate level, where it's like, hey, I think this might be the right thing for me, therefore I'm going to try it, you do actually kind of pin yourself into something that might not be the right thing. And you know, for myself, thankfully I only had 5 years, but kind of took a semester off in the middle of my college experience. But basically, you know, I didn't actually incur a ton of debt. I didn't incur a whole lot of like mandatory life direction as a means to regain my investment in myself. But I think there are probably a decent number of kids that are in vet school that like, well, I went through the biology or the pre-vet thing, and now this is just what I'm supposed to do. But they're really unsure specifically if it is the quote unquote right thing. And then kind of circling back all the way to where you started, one of the big things that you can actually just throw out as a cautionary tale basically is realizing the fact that it doesn't matter what you're doing, at some point it's going to feel like work. Everything feels like work. I absolutely love what I do on a day-to-day basis. And there are many, many days where I feel like I'm beating my head against a wall and just working as hard as I can. But it's not in vain, I guess is the easiest way to put it. And you have to have a level of perspective where it's like you're going to put in, you're going to sacrifice, you know, a little bit of yourself, a little bit of your time, sometimes a little bit of your sanity, depending on what you're working on. And you're doing it with the understanding that, number one, having a greater purpose is huge in that respect, but also regaining that investment in yourself and just being willing to go through some of those hard knocks, I think is a pretty important realization for some people to have, because if they walk onto a job and say, you know what, I did my 8 years and I survived vet school and now it's day one and I'm ready to go and I just love what I do and it shouldn't feel like work, and then they just get kicked in the mouth, like that can be really demoralizing, I think. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you want to watch this full PAWcast, go ahead and click up here. If you want to watch our newest PAWcast, go ahead and click down here. And if you want to subscribe to see everything else that we do, go ahead and click right here. Thanks.